Hello, and welcome to the webinar for reporting on your listening session data. I'm Dr. April Schweinhart, part of the OSET team. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to translate theories and categories into written paragraphs, connect your focus group data to protective factors and risk factors in your community, make conclusions based on your focus group data, and complete the listening session report template for both youth and adult-led focus groups. You may recall this diagram from our previous webinars, and the exciting point of showing you this again is that we're finally in the last stage of planning our focus groups. So you'll recall that OSET took on the tasks of conceptualizing, designing, and developing your questions for your focus groups. At this point, you should have already conducted your focus groups and completed your data analysis. So we're at the final stage now of reporting your focus group data. Your focus group data should currently be in the form of multiple worksheets relating to each priority substance and intervening variable. You've already inserted your problem statement and priority population. You've put in information relating to your comms data, the results of your comms data, and you've analyzed your listening sessions and come up with theories and categories that relate to the specific intervening variable on each worksheet. So we know our intervening variables because SAMHSA gave them to us, but we also want to link these intervening variables back to research. So we know that we asked questions to get at our community's perceived parental perceptions of underage drinking or prescription drug misuse, perceived peer and youth perceptions of the same things, the perceived family communication around underage drinking and prescription drug use, and the perceived risk harm of each substance. But each of these intervening variables can be linked to risk and protective factors important for prevention. And it's these risk and protective factors that are going to help guide our report format as we think about our intervening variables. So we'll start with risk factors. The research has identified many risk factors that increase the likelihood of adolescent substance abuse, pregnancy, school dropout, youth violence, and delinquency. So risk factors are different kinds of things that can lead to these bad outcomes. The research-based risk factors that we're going to focus on are frequently divided into 4 domains: community risk factors, familial risk factors, school risk factors, and individual and peer risk factors. The counter to risk factors are protective factors. The more protective factors that an individual has, the less risk for unhealthy behavior. So research has also identified 4 personal characteristics as protective factors, including gender, resiliency, positive social orientation, and intelligence. But as you can see, these protective factors are largely innate. They're not things that we can change about a person. So for our reporting, we're going to focus on 2 additional protective factors described by Hogan et al., which include bonding with both family and peers, and healthy beliefs and clear standards. And for us, that relates to healthy beliefs and clear standards around our priority substances. Additionally, we're going to talk about strategies that comprise a comprehensive prevention program. CSAP has identified 6 strategies: information dissemination, prevention education, alternative activities, community-based processes, environmental approaches, and problem identification and referral. So when we write about our strategies to combat underage drinking or prescription drug misuse, we're going to focus on these 6 areas. Now we'll move on to talking about the report template itself. OSET has already taken on the task of filling in for you the title page, appendices, introduction, method section, protocol, participant section, data analysis section, and the introduction for your results. So each of these areas has a few lines for you to complete, and we've highlighted these in each of the templates. And there's a template for both your youth focus groups and your adult focus groups. And they are slightly different, although they're predominantly the same. But the youth template has information specific to youth, and the adult template has information specific to adults. So now we're going to go step by step through what is an example of the template, in this case, the youth template, and show you what it is that you're expected to fill in and what each section covers. So this is the title page of the youth template. And on this page, you'll want to sub out your own logo or heading for instead of the Vonovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. You'll want to insert your county name, your coalition name, and your contact information at the bottom. The next page is the acknowledgements page, just acknowledging the different individuals that helped your project succeed. So we've already filled in the Vonovich School, PIRE, and the set team, but anyone that you additionally want to acknowledge on this page should be included here. The next page is the introduction, which we've already written for you. On this page, you just need to insert your county and coalition name and your priority substance or problem of practice, whether that's underage drinking or prescription misuse. We've already actually put the priority population, whether it's youth or parents of youth in the community, on the respective templates. So this introduction just states that you are one of 10 communities funded as part of the SPF PFS initiative, and that part of this project entailed conducting a needs assessment that included listening sessions or focus groups with your priority population. This report synthesizes those results and provides details about how the listening sessions were conducted. The next section is the method section. Here we list both sets of guiding questions. So the focus groups were designed to capture information relating to 4 intervening variables as required by SAMHSA, and our guiding questions were designed around these intervening variables. But we had slightly different guiding questions, if you'll recall, for each priority substance. So what you want to do for this section is simply delete the set of 4 questions that are irrelevant to you. So if you were dealing with prescription drug, you would keep this set of 4 questions. If you were dealing with underage drinking, you would delete this set and keep the other set. Moving on to the interview protocols, we've already written this section for you. So each listening session utilized a standard open-ended group interview protocol. We used this protocol because we had a limited time, it's a systematic approach, and it kept the conversation focused. We also mentioned in this section that we use the facilitation guides, and we're including a copy of those facilitation guides in the appendices. So you'll notice that in the youth template, the appendices are the facilitation guides for youth, and in the parent template, the appendices are facilitation guides for parents. The next section describes the participants of your listening session, so you'll have a little more information to fill in here. We've already filled in whether the key informants are students or parents or guardians of students. But this section also details that we conduct our 4 focus groups with youth, and you'll need to input the ages of your priority population. And then we do already state, though, whether it was youth or parents of youth for the specific templates. We've also already put in reference to Appendix C, which, depending on the template you're working on, is either the parental consent student assent form or the adult consent form. So this sentence does not read as an or in the actual templates. It's already written correctly. And then this paragraph just states the protocols that you undertook when you conducted your listening session. The coalition coordinator invited informants to participate, scheduled the interviews, coordinated the times and locations. If anything about that's different for your particular community, you can change it. At the beginning of each focus group, the focus group team read a script which clearly stated the informants were participating voluntarily, had the option to refuse, to answer any questions. Through the course of the project, you conducted 4 total group sessions, 2 for each report, and a total of XX number of individuals participated. So that's a section where you will need to enter how many youth or parents, depending on the template, participated in your focus groups overall. And then the other thing that you need to change in this section is if you incentivized your adult participants or your youth participants, be sure to include how they were compensated or incentivized here. The data analysis section should be the same for everyone because it's based on the other 2 webinars that you've already listened to. So the qualitative data analysis techniques we use to analyze the data collected from group interviews are described here. You used content analysis to analyze responses to open-ended items, which is similar to searching for recurring words or themes. The text was analyzed to see what phrases, concepts, and words were prevalent throughout the informant's responses. During this stage of the analysis, coding categories were identified. Through this coding process, data was sorted and defined into categories that were applicable to the purpose of the research. Codes were defined and redefined. At the end of the analysis, major codes were identified as central themes or concepts, and these central themes were assembled by pattern analysis for the development of major themes. These are the themes that were your conclusions from, and to ensure credibility of both the procedures and the conclusions, we used analyst triangulation. So this fancy word just means that you had 2 or more people independently analyze the data and compare their findings. So this is just what we were emphasizing throughout both of the previous webinars, that multiple people should be working together to analyze your qualitative data. The results section introduction should also be the same for everyone. There's nothing for you to change here. Here we're just going over what we just talked about, the different risk and protective factors for youth in the community. So the introduction to your results is the introduction to risk factors and protective factors. So risk factors increase the likelihood of substance abuse, teen pregnancy, dropout, violence, etc. Protective factors provide the counter risk factors, and then we list each of the risk and protective factors we're going to be talking about are. This is the meat of what you're really going to enter into the report template. So we've talked about introduction, methods, and results. The next parts are really up to you. The results section itself is organized by the 4 guiding questions, and each guiding question is related to the risk factor, protective factors, or strategies for prevention that are relevant to that intervening variable. So we'll walk through each of the guiding questions just so you can see which risk and protective factors apply and how we wrote the report. So as you can see, for each section, we list again both sets of guiding questions for each substance. So you'll delete one of the guiding questions depending on what substance is a priority in your community. So you would either delete the first question about prescription drugs or the second one about underage drinking. And then as you can see, we've written a really brief introduction to the results section here for you about personal risk and protective factors related to substance use and abuse. So for question 1, regarding perceptions of parental disapproval or approval, these particular factors are family risk factors and the protective factor of family bonding. And so you'll want to organize your themes around these 2 concepts. You'll also notice that we've highlighted the language needs some transition language here based on findings. Obviously, you don't want to keep that sentence. But since we don't know what your data actually say, we're not able to transition from the general introduction to these risk and protective factors to your specific data. So when you figure out how your data relate to the risk factors of the family situation and the protective factors of familial bonding, you can write a transition sentence or two to introduce those two ideas. Similarly, for question 2, you would delete one of the two questions at the top, keeping either prescription drug or underage drinking. And this section focuses on the personal risk and protective factors related to school and individuals and peers, as well as having healthy beliefs and clear standards for protective factors. So because these questions and this intervening variable has to do with social cues and positive peer influence, the risk factors are having a poor school environment or poor peer relationships, and the protective factors are having healthy beliefs and clear individual standards, which could be set by peers or oneself. Again, we've written a broad introduction to these factors for you, and you'll need to insert some transition language based on your specific data. For question 3, you'll delete one of the questions depending on your substance. We've written the general introduction, and the risk and protective factors that apply here, because this intervening variable revolves around family conversations, are the risk factors of the family and the protective factors of bonding, healthy beliefs, and clear standards. We've bolded these risk and protective factors under each guiding question section just to give you a template to write from. You don't need to write a sentence under each bolded heading. You can just summarize your ideas based on these specific risk and protective factors, or you can write a little under each. That's up to you, but we just wanted to provide you the framework to relate your findings back to risk and protective factors for each guiding question. The last guiding question relates to the strategy that youth perceive as effective to decrease the harmful effects of using substances. So this is where we're tying it back into CSAP 6 strategies to comprise a comprehensive prevention program. And those 6 strategies, again, are information dissemination, prevention education, alternative activities, community-based processes, or environmental approaches. And then we also have problem identification and referral. Your particular data may have all 6 of these strategies identified from your focus groups, or it may only have a few of them. But we wanted to list them all here so that you could relate your focus group findings back to the CSAP identified strategies. So you can talk about the strategies that were not identified in your focus groups and the ones that were. And don't forget to add some transition language between the general introduction and your specific data. The last section of the report is the section that we couldn't write at all because it is the section where you make conclusions based on your data. And these conclusions have to come from within the data. We don't know what your data say, and so we can't even provide you with a brief introduction. But when you write this section, you'll want to ask yourself some key questions like, what are the main ideas from your data? What did your data tell you about your intervening variables? And what are the biggest take-home messages of your listening sessions? And then you can also relate it back to our ideas about risk factors, protective factors, and the CSAP strategies. And then when you're writing the conclusion section, remember that writing is an iterative process. Just like the data analysis process for qualitative data, writing takes time and many revisions as well. And you might come into your report thinking that your conclusion section is going to be written one way. But once you write each of your result sections, you'll find that you might have different conclusions. So remember to revise and reconsider and relate to others and talk about what your conclusions might be for your specific community. As I mentioned, we have included in each report template appendices for the interview scripts and the consent or assent forms for youth or adults. Be sure to make the relevant highlighted changes in these documents as you did with the sample we provided you when you were conducting the listening session. So these appendices are the same as the samples we provided you at the learning community. You'll want to be sure that you make any of the changes that you made in your consent or assent documents or interview scripts for your report as well. Your report wants to be what you actually used and not a sample that was provided by OSET. Here's just some general things to keep in mind when you're writing your whole report. The idea of this report is to provide new insights on the topic, but you also want to limit the number of key points so that they'll be remembered and they really are the main ideas. You also always, just like in your data analysis process, want to verify findings with your staff that are familiar with the data. And your report should be brief, clear, and concise. We've actually already written the majority of the report for you. You're writing a paragraph or two under each guiding question and a few paragraphs of conclusion, and that's it. So your report should certainly be brief, and be sure to keep your writing clear and concise. One last thing that I wanted to mention was the table of contents. We have automatically inserted a table of contents for you, and once you've deleted the appropriate questions based on your substance and everything for your report is in place, you should be able to automatically update and populate the table of contents to reflect your specific report. So just in case you're not familiar with how to do this, if you go to the table of contents page in the report template and click Update Table, this window will appear saying that Word is updating the table of contents. Select one of the following options. You want to make sure you select Update Entire Table rather than Update Page Numbers Only, because then it will change both the headings and the page numbers in the table, and it should reflect your actual report rather than the sample report. So now you should really have a complete listening session report. Please use this webinar to fill in your template and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.